assessments, and they demand sophisticated mental health interventions. And we certainly don't get it right with all of these kids by any means. We could do a lot better with them. But they do require expert mental health interventions. But they're not the same as the 20 to 25% who are identified in population surveys as having some form of mental disorder. Now, I don't want to for a minute diminish the distress and suffering that those children and young people might be feeling, and the effect that might have on them and their community. I'm not saying that we should dismiss that in any way. What I'm saying is that there's no evidence that the mental health system does any better with those kids than a whole range of other possible interventions, whether it's general practice or general counselling or nothing at all, or talking to their mates. And there are a whole pile of things that we can do that might make a difference to those young people, but one of them isn't proselytising for them to come into the mental health system. So if it was possible to engage in trading of international experts, I'd want to repatriate Sir Michael Marmot from the UK, where even Conservative governments are listening to his message about the need to institute social change to make a difference to mental health. And Marmot says what other people have been saying, but he says it with a great deal more authority and evidence, well packaged, that we must invest in infancy. We must invest in parents. Some of you may need to cover your eyes for the next slide because it's quite shocking. If we look at this population here, these are the infants at 22 months who are doing best. And if you look at those who come from high socioeconomic background and you follow them until they're age 10, they'll do what we'd expect them to do, regress towards the mean. But look, here's the population who started out in every way equivalent to that population, but they came from a low socioeconomic status. Look what happens. By the time they're age 10, they've been crossed in terms of their development by the people who started out worst but had a high socioeconomic status and finished up here. If you look at the second of Marmot's assessments, here he looks at the value of education and the importance of education in determining our health. And look at this. This is if you've got no qualifications. This is all illnesses, not just mental illnesses, but mental and physical illnesses. And the percent who are ill, all the way between the age of 16 to 74, approaches 30%. And you can see that it's less than half in those who've got tertiary level education. Now, of course, this isn't simple cause and effect, because people with worse health will drift in this direction. Nevertheless, it's quite a striking graph. So what does that mean if we and it's the same for mental health as it is for physical health. What does that mean about trying to intervene to improve the mental health of the community? It means you don't invest in mental health. You invest in education. But what does that look like? If we took the $1 billion or $2 billion that we've just invested in mental health in this country, which is a dramatic, I don't know how many percent it is increase, but it's a dramatic increase. If we took it out of mental health and put it into education, it'd be a drop in the bucket, because education is a much more expensive thing to engage in than mental health. And so we don't do that. You can see politically why it's much more exciting to put the money into mental health than it is into education, because nobody's even going to notice if you put it into education. And so we've got a Prime Minister who's committed to improving education and has done some quite good things in that direction. But, even in those circumstances, she's not going to have the courage or the support to make the kind of investment into education so that, day of all days, you might need a higher tertiary score to get into teaching than you do to get into commerce. That where society might value education to the point where we pay teachers a higher rate than we pay, kids who move money around in the financial market. And there are a range of other recommendations that Marmot makes, and that have been, to some extent at least, bought by a Conservative government. And this is my final slide, which is just to look at the issue of obesity. And, for a couple of reasons, really. First, to highlight that, there's no separation to be made between physical health and mental health, and obesity is possibly the best demonstration of that. What's impressive about this graph, which you can see the top line is showing the level of obesity in those who are most deprived socioeconomically, and the bottom line in those who are most privileged. What impresses me about the graph is not the fact that overall it separates in the way that it does, but how orderly it is. How across 9 different jurisdictions in the UK, in every single jurisdiction, there's an orderly progression between how you do if you come from the most privileged circumstances and how you do if you come from the least privileged circumstances. So, thank you. I'm going to stop there.